Brian Piers, what's the deal with physical therapy and Seinfeld?
Excellent. Been waiting for this all day, Matt.
So talk to me. What's the interrelation between Seinfeld and physical therapy?
Okay. So I was thinking about this a little bit when you proposed the topic. I was thinking about the idea that Seinfeld, at least to me, is about this kind of hypervigilance, right? Like just a deep understanding of what's going on in the world and paying attention to everything, maybe a little too closely, and then seeing what might aggravate you, what might kind of cause you to react in certain ways that may or may not be socially acceptable. And then I was thinking about how that level of curiosity plays in kind of professionally sometimes. So I think when you're a physical therapist, you're kind of part detective, trying to figure out what's going on with somebody when they're complaining about their back or their ankle. And not like a physician, you don't have access. You can't just X-ray everything and MRI everything and give people medication. You got to really get in there and figure out what's going on with your hands. That kind of paying attention to all these little clues and details, similar to the trajectory of a Seinfeld episode. Put the pieces of the puzzle together, see how it all comes together at the end, blend it all together. There's probably some connection in there subconsciously that allows those two interests to combine in my world. But I'd say that's the deal with those two subjects.
Okay, that was a very deep answer. That was a lot of depth to it, a lot of thought to it. I wasn't expecting something so thoughtful from you.
Well, listen, you give me a forum like this and such a intriguing topic. I'm gonna have to deliver for you, Matt.
That was really good. I was thinking of the episode where George has to pay a cancellation fee because he doesn't, and Elaine is injured because of the ski. She had to carry skis. And
That's right.
they say to the physical therapist, if I'm not mistaken, they say to her, somebody says, well, you might want to do something about that hair. It's really old-fashioned. And then the assistant says, they're right, you should. But, was that a physical therapist? I feel that was a physical therapist. Tell me I'm wrong.
No, I think you're right. I sometimes confuse that with the massage therapy episode, but I think that was a separate one. Yes, I believe you are correct. I defer to you on all these Seinfeld kind of historical data points, but I think you can defer to me on the Seinfeld lifestyle. You know, just how am I seeing Seinfeld in every day? But I lean on you for the historical pieces. But I believe you are correct on
Think
that.
there was a physical therapist on Science. I think that was the episode. So, all right. So hypervigilance. That's really interesting. Just being aware, being so, and so bring me back all the way. So I remember you got into physics right out of high school into college. You had a focus. You were pretty focused, kind of right away. You knew what you wanted to do. So as we look to learn more about different professions, I feel like maybe you could share about that level of focus and what got you into the field to begin with, and what led to this hypervigilance over time.
Yeah, everything. I should start at the end and say everything worked out perfect, but I wouldn't recommend anybody maybe make that decision at 13 years old, like like I might have. But I remember being I guess after freshman year of high school, somebody asked me what I wanted to do for a living. I'm like, I have no idea. It'd be good to do something where I'm not sitting behind a desk all day. It'd be nice to do something where I'm, maybe doing some good in the world. And then someone told me, oh, you should look at being a physical therapist. I know someone who's a physical therapist and they do very well and they love their job. And then I saw on the cover of a magazine, maybe like a US News and World Report or something along those lines, it was like fastest growing profession and physical therapy, number one. And I thought, well, maybe there's something to this. So I went and I volunteered for a day because that's what you do to go get some shadowing hours or whatever. So I was there for like maybe 5 hours and I came home. I was like, that's it. I'll just do that. That sounds great. Had a great day, great experience. Everybody there was super nice. Patients were all appreciative and friendly. The therapists all seemed like cool, normal, functioning adults. The office was nice. I was like, oh, I could just do this. So then high school was just about figuring out how I was going to get into PT school. And then PT school was about figuring out how I was going to get a job. And then got the job and I was like, wow, I made it. I've crossed the finish line, but I don't know what I really got myself into. It has all worked out, but it definitely was maybe not a decision I would recommend that any young person make at the age 13.
Wow, I didn't know that. I knew you were focused going into university. But even before that, huh? So you were thinking that's even
Oh yeah.
pre-high school. Wow, okay, that's pretty early.
Well, you know what happens. I don't know when you made your career choice, but when you're like a teenager and someone asks you what you want to do and you have an answer that's like sounds mature, the affirmation you get is like intoxicating. You know, if you're like someone's like, "Well, what are you going to do?" It's like, "I'm going to be a physical therapist." They're like, "Oh, look at this. He's got it all figured out." So it was like everybody you talked to was just like, "That's great. Oh, that's a great field. Oh, it's." They're just so impressed you have some direction that you just take it like, oh, look at me, I'm a hero here. I got it all figured out. Everybody seems to think this is a good idea. So I think I had the idea, but I never second guessed it because all I got was just this, affirmation. Oh, this is great. This is going to be great. You're going to be great. Everything's going to be great. And then it was just a matter of trying to get from 13 to 22 with a degree and actually practice. And it all worked, but it definitely wasn't until I got to my first job where I was like, wow, what did I really get is this really what I want to be doing? But when you train for like one thing in particular, you get that one job in particular. It's not like you're going to get a degree in economics or psychology and they're like, oh, I'll just go a different direction. Like I was trained to do one thing and then I was going to do that thing whether I liked it or not.
Okay. So bring me back to Archbishop Malloy High School, and this is seeking colleges or searching for colleges that would have physical
Yeah.
therapy. Uh, what was that like sophomore year, junior years? You started to research colleges and explore options through the college counseling office.
Well, I'd imagine your experience might have been similar to mine in that you talk to a gentleman who seems to know a lot more about colleges than you do, and he says, "Oh, what's your plan?" You give them some list, they give you some feedback, and off you go. But I had the advantage of like there's only so many schools that had a physical therapy program, so it's like, all right, well here's the schools that are on the East Coast, and here's maybe what the pros and cons are. And at that point, it was like, do you want to get a bachelor's degree or do you want to go for a master's degree? So I was like, oh, I'll just go for the master's. That seems to make more sense. And then that limited the list down further. And then I applied to all the schools that I could get into like the master's part of the program out of high school. Like, so get in there, keep your GPA up, and you could go right from bachelor's to master's, which seemed good. I wouldn't have to take the GREs. I wouldn't have to worry as much about my GPA. Wouldn't have to worry about moving and going to another school. Again, it seemed like a great idea at the time. In retrospect, it would have been fine to go to a different grad school, but at the time, it seemed like I could move through the process a little faster. So I would say the guidance I got out as a youngster was basically like, here's the book. Remember that book that was like the size of the phone book that had all the information on all the schools, and there was somewhere in there where you could search by major. And I was like, all right, I'll just apply to these schools. So yeah, I applied to all of them, and then there was a small school in Western Pennsylvania that seemed to be a little more generous with the scholarship money, St. Francis, and that's where I headed. Another interesting, you look back on these things, and they all seemed like great ideas at the time, and then you think, creeping up on 50, I'm like, would I do that again that way, or would I tell like my kids to do it that way? The school was accredited, but the program was not accredited. And they didn't accredit you until they graduated the first class. So I went there just assuming like, oh, everything will be fine. Like, they'll move these kids through and then you'll graduate. But there's a possibility you could pay that private school tuition for 5 years and then get to the end of them going, sorry, it didn't work out. So it's a bit of a risk, but I didn't really realize it was a risk at the time. So it all worked out. And moved back to New York when I was done.
Okay. I want to talk a little bit more about that St. Francis years a bit, but I want to quickly ask you, did you consider becoming a city planner or an architect or a marine biologist? Or it
Maybe
sounds like you
industrial
didn't. It sounds
smoothing.
like you didn't. I mean, it sounds like you kind of knew early, but nothing's higher than architect, as you might know.
Right. Well, maybe an importer exporter. Maybe that would be that almost could get you into any room, any conversation. No, I would say that laser focus kept me away from all of those assistant to the traveling secretary, all those types of gigs. Starting my own Krameric Industries or anything entrepreneurial. It all just went to the side. So, yeah, I went right to when I was at St. Francis, it was kind of like this laser focus on like, let me just get out of here and then work like in sports medicine type stuff. All I really wanted to do was see like orthopedic injuries. So, but when you get there, you got to learn how to treat everything. Physical therapists are generalists, so you got to be able to treat an infant, and you got to be able to treat someone who's severely disabled. You got to treat old and young. So I went there just thinking, oh, I'll just focus on this piece, but I had never really spent any time in a hospital. I had never really spent any time around little kids. So it was eye-opening to try and learn all of that while I was there. But I was just kind of had in the back of my head that, all right, I don't really plan on doing any of this. I plan on doing just this kind of treatment. But yeah, a little bit probably ignorant to the idea that I needed to learn a little more than just the specialty I was looking for.
Okay. So in those college years, I'm thinking back to this classroom, but then there's also the lab. So you could learn
Mm-hmm.
it through the books and everything, but then did this include basically going out into lab and working with patients even during your college years and looking at an ankle or looking at a back injury during your college? Was that the lab part of it, or was it mostly books and classroom work?
So you're in the classroom for probably like 75% of the time. The other 25%, you're like practicing on each other or your classmates, like what you're learning. So like, you learn how to do blood pressure, you're practicing it on a healthy, college aged person, and learning how to do it that way. But at some point, you got to make that jump and deal with people who have issues. So that part you do, at least for me, we did it in blocks of like 6 weeks or 8 weeks where you'd leave campus and you'd go do an internship at a hospital or at a outpatient facility. But I think now they've figured out that kind of like maybe what you're alluding to, that it would be better if it was kind of all meshed together. So most colleges try and like, send you out for half the day and then bring you to the classroom half the day and mix it together. But we're in like a really small rural area. It would have been like almost impossible to get the type of exposure you needed, like worked into your classroom, like worked into your like class schedule. So for us, it was like, just go to class for these, I don't know, whatever, 8 weeks. And then off you go to go train somewhere else for 8 weeks.
And this was St. Francis in Pennsylvania, yeah?
Yes, the booming metropolis of Loretto, Pennsylvania. No traffic lights, Matt. One stop sign in a town of maybe like 500 people. And the school was small enough to only have, I think it was like 800 kids living on campus. Nothing 5 miles in one direction or 5 miles in the other direction. Just this tiny campus in the middle of nowhere with and next to the campus is a Federal Corrections Institute. And that's it, up on top of this mountain. It's the school, this tiny town, and then a prison. That was it.
Okay. So I want, just like your career focus at a young age, I would love to stay focused during this episode. At the same time, I want to do some sidebars here, like traffic lights, because you have a
Yes.
lot of interesting things that happen to you in your life, right? If memory serves, a car drove into your house in your teenage years. So there was no, I'm just thinking the traffic light, there was no traffic. Did that happen? And if so, you got to share details with any listeners about a car ending up in your house.
It's a true story. It's a true story, part of the Pierce family legend. So the neighborhood I grew up in, it was a T intersection. They're all row houses, right? One house stacked right next to the other, no space in between. And we were at the center of a T intersection. And the long part of that T would have been like I don't know, like a 10 or 12 city block run up to that with no light and no traffic signs, no stop signs. So you could really pick up some steam and head down that avenue. And that stop sign must have snuck up on a couple people who maybe weren't paying close enough attention or were going a little too fast, and then plow right through that stop sign, hitting the crust of that T intersection, which would have been our house. So uprooting trees, like tree stumps that were there, like in the way, just smashing into it. Must have been like 50, 60 miles an hour, like projectile tree stumps, and then other cases like knocking over trees. But coming to the point where, like, imagine like a row house in the city, you go right kind of up the little staircase, right? Like maybe like 5 or 6 steps onto like an outdoor porch, like open porch area. Car just going up the steps onto the porch and smashing into the front of the house. And then another time it happened, just missed the staircase, but went to the side of it, which would have meant plowing like right into the house. So yeah, this was like running that stop sign and having accidents there was like a common thing, but 3 times a car smashed right through the even cars that were parked there, like plowing right through, right up into the house. So yes, really wild, wild circumstance.
That's happened more than once. We're talking 3 times.
Yeah, 3 times. It was crazy. It's like I mean, like imagine being in your house and a car smashing into your house at full speed, like a sound you've never heard before, and then like open the house door and a scene you've never seen before. Yeah, crazy, crazy scenario, but a very dangerous intersection. So city planning probably should have been one of those things. I was like, should have been thinking like, how can I maybe mitigate this type of risk in similar neighborhoods?
It didn't inspire you to become a city planner, these. So, of these three instances, were you in the house and have any of these three or one of these
Yes,
three?
for
Yeah.
sure. Yeah, yeah. One was like one was at night. But so I think the person might have been intoxicated. I think if I remember correctly. But another one was in the morning. Like I remember getting ready for school. Like we would have taken the bus at like I don't know, maybe like 7 in the morning. So getting ready at like 6:30 in the morning, and I was in the basement of the house. My room was in the basement at the time, and the car smashed into the house. It was like there was one room in between me and where the car smashed into. Yeah, crazy. Like half the car inside the house as I was getting ready in the morning. So, and think about this, like it's a row house. So you can't really go out the front. And when you go on the back, it's not like a driveway you could run out. You're kind of trapped around a bunch of fences and you have to hop like 4 fences just to get out of your own backyard because there's a massive scene of destruction in the front of your house. This is crazy.
Wow. And this is Ozone Park in Queens in New York City in the state of New York. Do I have the geography right? And what was 100 and something Avenue, 109th Avenue, 100,
107th Avenue, the intersection of 107th Avenue and 104th Street.
right into the house. It's reminding me of the episode with Elaine when her head was big, her big head. That bird flew right into your head like it couldn't avoid it. That car went right into your house like it couldn't avoid it. Cars were going right into your disproportionately large house.
So I think about I think about these when you see these weird like kind of circumstances or observations, and it sounds like it could be like a plot for a Seinfeld episode. I think about like so my dad grew up in that same house that I grew up in, and he heard the same noise I did, not the one in the morning, but a time it happened in the evening. He heard the same noise I did. We were on the opposite end of the house, so of course you hear that sound, and you like go run towards the front door, like what just happened. Well, my dad didn't run anywhere. He just like walked, right? Everything was like very kind of low key with this guy. So he walks up to the door. He opens like the storm door, like the wooden door, right? And then you would see like another door like in front of that, like what I think that's called the storm door, whatever. So he opens one door and now he's looking out of his front door and there's a car. Matt, it would have been like 2 feet from his face, right? And it was a van, which meant that the driver was only maybe 2 or 3 feet past that, and this guy's just looking right at him. This is the house the guy grew up in, right? My dad and his family's in the house now, and this is what he sees when he opens the door. He just closes the door and turns around and walks back down the hallway towards me. I'm like, Dad, what happened? He goes, we have to go out the other way. Like, no histrionics, no call the cops, no, oh my God, I can't believe what happened. No, you better run because, this thing could explode. Nothing. Just, we got to go out the other way.
I
So
think
it was
even
a very, I think about that like as a, potential Seinfeld character, like the guy whose just blood pressure never changes, like just emergency situation, totally calm, doesn't laugh, doesn't scream, no histrionics, just very even all the time.
Wow, so all 3 times. I'm assuming it needed house repairs. This is
Yeah. Yeah.
now that's a lot of work to be done when a car flew into your house like I couldn't avoid it. And wow, so and then when was the last time? What year did it last happen when you lived there?
Well, it could have happened anytime after I would have left in 1996 when the house was sold.
Okay.
But I know that in the in the years before, it was at least 3 times it connected with the house, but a lot of accidents at that intersection over time.
Yeah. So I'm wondering since 1996, since you moved out, how many times it's happened, or if there was some type of corrective measure taken, such as a
I'll bet there's I bet someone figured out that maybe there should be a couple of stop signs or a speed bump. Probably not in New York City, you wouldn't find a speed bump, but probably a couple of signs or maybe a traffic light or two to maybe slow down the traffic there.
you had to go out the other way, huh? You need to
Got to
go
go out. Got to go out the other
the other
way.
way.
Got to go out the other way.
Okay, so going back, that's we'll bounce around a bit, but that's definitely a unique to have a car drive into your house 3 times as a youngster. That's I don't know how many other people have that situation, but there's other unique things about you that I'm sure will come up during today's episode.
Well, that does remind me, Matt, of that idea that um, so think about like if something like that happens, a car smashes into your house, your initial reaction might be like, well, that was like a once in a lifetime thing. Like, well, that'll never happen again. So I think about the times when like I put this gazebo in my backyard, right? So this big wooden structure thing, it's like 12 by 14. I bought at Costco, assembled it. It's massive. Like it took 6 guys to like lift it and move it, like just an enormous structure. And I have some engineers in my life, some friends, and they were like, you got to make sure you bolt that thing down, like put it in like a concrete casing and whatever. Because if a storm comes through, it's going to be like a kite, like it just get up underneath there and move it. I'm like, there's no way. Like if a storm big enough to move that thing were to hit this property, I'd have a bigger problem than my gazebo falling over. So I was like, we'll let it go. So like a couple weeks ago, we had a big storm here on the 4th of July, like a tornado blew through. And it wasn't like my house wasn't that affected. There's a lot of rain and wind and some tree damage, but like a mile away from me, they were like destroying houses, like condemned houses. And I thought, so like obviously they had touchdown, they had a problem. But my initial reaction was like okay, if it would have happened here, I'd look like an idiot for not bolting down my flying apparatus in the backyard. But the other part of me, maybe like Costanza, thought like, well, that'll never happen again. Like that was a once in a lifetime, and I dodged it. Like I'm good. I don't have to take any more preventative measures.
You're good now.
But would lightning strike twice? Or did like if you just dodged the bullet, if George just dodged the bullet, his reaction would be like, oh, all right, see, nothing to worry about. I'm good for the rest of my life.
I love it. So let's go back to St. Francis. So you went from New York City to a one traffic light town. So this was a transition. Tell me about what that was like, being a city guy basically your whole life, really, and then going off to a non-city lifestyle as a teenager still. So what was that transition like?
So just a point of correction, this is a no traffic light town.
No traffic? I thought you said
no traffic light town.
Zero?
This is a one stop sign town. No traffic light. So
how many traffic lights do you think there are in New York City?
That's a great question. Could there be like 10,000 traffic lights in New York City?
Okay. All right, that's your first guess, but zero in St. Francis town, which was what was the name of the town again?
Loretto, Pennsylvania.
Okay, so tell me about that transition.
So I think when you move from big city to like medium-sized city, I think you probably get a little bit of like this, you really feel the difference, right? Like all I can't walk everywhere, or my school bus ride is a little further than it used to be, or maybe you have different types of crime issues or traffic issues are different, right? Like you feel the difference when you go from a big city to like a smaller town or a medium-sized city. But when you go from one extreme to the other, I think you can't even digest it. Like it just feels like you're living a totally different lifestyle. To go from that hyper urban to like that rural, it feels like you're at camp for 5 years. Just there's no sense of like, because you can't get pizza, it doesn't bother you that you can't walk to the pizza place anymore. You know what I mean? Like, because there's no crime and nothing happening, you don't even think about crime in the way that you did before. Like it just feels like a totally different reality. So I love that there was less to worry about. There was less people to worry about, but people would come visit me and they'd be like, how are you how are you living out here in the middle of nowhere like this? But it was like its own bubble. I mean, you know how a college campus is. It's got everything you need, and you don't have to leave. So I don't think I remember getting there, and like I don't know, you show up like mid-August as a freshman, and then you come home. I came home like I don't know, probably like October for some type of break. That time that I got there from mid-August to mid-October, I hadn't left the campus once. Like I hadn't been in a vehicle for 8 weeks or whatever that difference was. It was just like I was just living in this bubble, like going to camp for 2 months. It was like a whole different reality. So it never even struck me. Occasionally there'd be something I would need, like I had to take a flight somewhere, and you'd be like, oh, well, that's just not going to happen. You know, it would take you so long to get to the airport, and then you couldn't get anywhere direct from there. But generally, like it didn't even faze me. And then where I wound up settling down eventually, like as an adult, is kind of halfway between, well, geographically halfway between those two spots, but also like lifestyle wise, about halfway between. So it's I don't know, like a medium sized city with enough to keep me busy.
Okay. So here you are at St. Francis learning in classroom, but also these kind of chunks of weeks at a time, being in the lab,
Mm-hmm.
as I call it, but working with people.
Yeah.
When was the first time you had this, or what's the first memory you have of like, hey, I really helped that person, a patient?
That's a great question. That's a great question. I remember having a patient who they're having all this back pain, and it was a guy who was getting married like the upcoming weekend, and he might have came in on like a Tuesday or Wednesday with like debilitating back pain, and the pressure was on. Like this guy's got to, dance with his wife. He's got to stand at the altar, and the guy can't like get on his feet. And I won't say it's because I had some miraculous solution for him, but it was just therapy. Like he needed to be rehabilitated, and at that point, I was a novice, but I knew what to do, and came around quick. Like he responded really well, and then was able to pull it off. Right, so the guy has like the biggest day of his life, and 3 days before that day, he was not sure that he was going to be able to do any of the things he needed to do that day. And then as a result of kind of the rehab process, he pulled it off without a problem and was super appreciative. And then that was the first time I probably felt like, oh, like this is like really potentially making an impact on someone's quality of life, right? So there are times like there's therapists who work like in like, let's say like neurological rehab, right? Where like they're teaching someone to walk again, or someone's recovering from a stroke and they're teaching them how to feed themselves again and things. That's incredibly rewarding, but it's a lot of pressure, and it takes place over a long period of time, right? Like you're slowly building towards something. But what I've always liked is that part of rehabilitation where it's a smaller issue. Like if you were having an ankle pain, ankle sprain or something, your life would go on. Like you can live with that, but you might not be able to run. You might not be able to play hoops. And if I could insert myself into that equation and make the difference between you being able to play hoops and not, to me, that's what I would find most fulfilling. Like that you had one problem in your life, it didn't stop you in your tracks, but it detracted from your quality of life. And I was able to work with you on getting you through that piece and then increasing your quality of life somehow. So to me, that's always what I was drawn towards. Like find like a little piece that someone's struggling with. And if I could be the person who's correcting that, then I'd feel totally satisfied in my work.
Very nice. So job history wise, so coming out of St. Francis now, how did you land your first job? Your first kind of official job,
Yeah. So
not an
so I
intern.
moved back to New York, and this is interesting. Almost all therapists at that time, regardless of where they went to school, were all kind of making the same money. So it didn't seem like there was a lot to, there was a demand and you had some choices, but it wasn't like salary was going to be an issue. Like it was just going to be whatever it was as an entry level physical therapist in 2000. But somebody offered me, instead of everybody who was making $40,000 a year in 2000, somebody offered me $60,000 a year. And I thought, look at this. I'm gonna take this. I'm gonna outperform all my classmates, out earn all my classmates, and all these people that went to more prestigious schools than I did. Like, look at me. I'm making all this much more money. And so I took this job, and then I learned quickly why they were paying all that money. It was very shady. It was, I would say there might have been some fraudulent billing going on that might have been like in my periphery, and it just was uncomfortable. And they were kind of leveraging my license for billing other things, and I never knew exactly what was going on, but I knew that as a new grad therapist, I was kind of a mark of like, oh, let's plug this guy in and we'll just tell him to do this and this and show up here and there. And it wasn't the type of therapy I wanted to do. It wasn't where I wanted to do it. And I certainly wasn't comfortable with how it was done. So I guess I would have started in, probably in July. And by December, I was like, I can't do this. I can't take any chances with this. So I had like this really high paying job that seemed low stress, but super shady. And that lasted about 6 months. And after that, I was like, I got to find like this more traditional path towards like being the guy who's in an outpatient setting. People come see me, they pay their copay. I'm in a more corporate environment where I'm a little more shielded. So I left there, and then I took like a more traditional job here in Pennsylvania. And I took that same pay cut that got me back down to where everybody else was. So when I left that one job, I remember my parents saying, "Do you really want to take a whatever it would have been a 30% pay cut, with, at this point in your career?" I'm like, yes, it has to happen. So, yeah. So then off I went. So the first job was like a disaster. Then after that, it's been, smooth sailing.
Well, how did you get that first job?
So, I was looking for a job, however you would look for a job in 2000, right? So some things in the newspaper, maybe there's a little internet activity, and I had put in some resumes and gotten some calls and done some interviews, but I wasn't like, nothing was great. Nothing was like moving quick enough for me. I was waiting for like to actually pass my test for licensure. So people were like, we'll wait till you finish. Like nothing was like, there was not some job that someone was like, yes, we'll hire you as soon as you pass the test. So I was like lukewarm. And then at some point I was at a party at a family member's house, and somebody asked me like, oh, what do you do? And I told them. They're like, oh, do you need a job? And I was like, I do need a job. I'm like, oh, great. Like, let's talk tomorrow. So after all, like the, internet searching and calling around and waiting and internships and all the things that I thought I was doing the right way to line me up for this perfect job, someone just dropped into my life with this job offer, and it turned out to be shady anyway. So the moral of the story might be there to do the homework, follow the little more traditional path out of the gates, make sure you're appreciative that you don't know everything you don't know. But yeah, the first job just dropped right in my lap.
Wow. And did you resign from that job without having another job lined up, or did you start to interview a bit and then resign having an offer on the table? How did you time that out, being a youngin in your first job, going into a little bit of change mode?
Yeah, so I called around to my friends who were practicing and kind of got to see if everybody was seeing like kind of the shady stuff that I was seeing. I had no point of reference, so I was trying to gauge what my other classmates were experiencing, and they seemed to be painting a much rosier picture than what I had. Mm-hmm. And so I started kind of inquiring at some of those locations where they were and in those areas. And sure enough, in the therapy world, it's a small universe. I mean, there's only so many people with a license to do it. And there's a demand for it. At that point, there was a really strong demand. So I had my senses that if someone needed somebody, I could be a good candidate to plug in. Because oftentimes in that situation, the beggars can't be choosers. They needed a licensed therapist to execute. So I targeted one or two of the practices of folks that I knew that were at, because I felt like I'd have an advantage of not making the same mistake again, of actually knowing what I was getting into and knowing that it was legit. So I applied to where one of my friends were, and then got the job there, and then fell into a much more traditional role. So the first one was probably networking by accident, and the second one was strategic networking to get myself in.
Very interesting. And refresh my memory, I feel like there's a point in time where you owned your own business, or a partner in a business, a partner in a therapy practice. So I guess two-part question: is that true? And if so, how did you get from that first year of, and then eventually own your own business, or be a partner in a business?
Yeah. So when I took that second job, it was a corporate atmosphere, large corporate healthcare providers. So I had a little more sense then of like what this really should look like and what organization looked like, and how they did the marketing, how they did the billing, how they did the operational management. And then I left there to go in partnership with a therapy group that was looking to expand. So I was able to get onto the ownership side without having to take a risk, right? Like I knew I could leverage my reputation to get some volume for this practice, and it would trade off in some ownership. So I left to go in partnership with another group, and that was great because I really learned a ton about how to operate and how all that stuff would work. And that was a really great relationship for a long time. I was able to get into a little bit of investing on the real estate side. Like all these offices have to lease from somebody, so we're able to buy some office space, buy some commercial real estate, move the office in there, and profit from that as well. So it was a great run with that group, and like a lot of partnerships over time, you start to kind of get people start to kind of get their interest in different directions, and it kind of ran its course. And then it was time to kind of get out of there. So I sold my share of that practice, and then it was all right. Now I got to do something different for a bit. So I continued to treat, but I went into like a different part of treatment. Just to, for non-compete purposes, started to do some different work in therapy while I planned on opening up my own shop, just me. So I got my feet wet a little bit by learning from someone who was really, really good at it for a really long period of time. And then after leaving with one stop in between, then was able to start my own, which is super scary, but I knew what the blueprint was beforehand. So it all worked out.
Wow. So that was a single shingle. Is that the nickname for that? It was you. This is your business. You founded it.
Yeah.
So that's really risky, some people might say, but also
Mm-hmm.
you had some experience leading up to it of being a partner in the practice. But what was that like starting your own business and being on your own, being a sole practitioner?
Yeah, it was scary. My wife is an occupational therapist, which is close enough that she has a real good appreciation for what would be involved in starting that practice and what risk we were taking. At the time, we had young kids, so it felt like a lot of pressure. So I kept a consulting gig to make sure that there was money coming in, and I would say that was smart because I probably would have. I don't know if I could have stood the pressure of building it on my own without the revenue coming in. Like, I don't know if I could have taken the pressure of taking out a big loan and not knowing that it was going to be successful. But the downfall of that was because I had that cushion, I never really had to feel all that pressure and all that stress that drives a lot of entrepreneurs to really push hard and find a way to do it for their family, et cetera. I knew I always had that cushion. I also always had the cushion of like, well, if this doesn't work, I could just go back and treat again with somebody else or join a big corporate practice or something like that. So it worked. It was very stressful, but it's almost like it wasn't stressful enough, which was an interesting lesson to learn. Like, I think if I would have put more pressure on myself, which I might have if I didn't have a wife and kids, I think it would have the practice would have probably performed better and I would have grown, opened a second office and moved on from there. But, no regrets. I learned a lot, but I also learned that I might not be built for that. I couldn't have, I don't think I would have slept well knowing that there was that much on the line. It was a tough time, but again, it was never as tough as it had to be because there was always money coming in the door.
Sounds like you were well hedged. You had that hedge.
Yeah, very well hedged. I was doing consulting. I was teaching at the time. My wife I think she was working part-time at the time as well. So I just always think about people who put it all on the line, put all their chips in and be like, we got to make this work. And they find a way. Right. But I didn't have it in me at that point. I needed that security blanket. It was an interesting time to go through because you're feeling like you want to put all your eggs in because that's what you're reading about. That's what they make movies about. That's what people write books about, right? Like you're down to your last dollar. You're building it out of your garage. You're working crazy hours. And I wanted that. Like I felt inspired by the business books I was reading and the stories of other people who had made it. And I saw this tremendous need in the market and the industry is growing. But there was a part of me that was just like, what if it doesn't work? Like, could I really put it all on the line and, downsize my house after, upgrading and worry about like kids, not putting them in private school because, dad has this dream. I thought it's almost like, I didn't have to, right? I didn't have to. I could just go work somewhere and make a really comfortable salary. So it made a very there was a lot of push and pull of like that entrepreneurial spirit versus like real practicality.
Wow, it's really interesting. So, talk to me about the time, I guess, time spans. So, when you were a partner in that practice that had also opened other offices for commercial real
Mm-hmm.
estate, so how many years were you in that practice with others as a partner?
That's probably about 6 years, 6,
6 years?
7 years.
Okay.
Yeah.
And then how many years did you have your own shop?
I think that was like 3 years, maybe.
3 years. Okay.
Yeah.
What came
I
next?
was I was teaching at the time, and I had an opportunity to. I was going to open up a second office in the town that I was teaching in. It was like 45 minutes from where the practice was. It would have been perfect. Going to service the athletes from the school. Made a lot of sense. I could split my time in two locations. Eventually, build them up enough to hire someone else, run one, I run the other, blah blah blah. But then the school decided they were going this small school for their athletic department. They were going to open up their own physical therapy practice, and they invited me to join the faculty and then run that practice. And I thought, okay, well, this is, as far as practicing goes, is ideal circumstance for me. Like, I'm going to just be treating athletes. I'm also going to have this kind of cushy academic schedule of teaching. Maybe this would be a better life for me and my family, as opposed to me scrambling to try between these two towns to try and make two offices work for a while. So I decided to get rid of the practice, to sell off the assets and the insurance contracts, and then just go into teaching full time. So then I kept doing consulting on the insurance side, and then was teaching and then treating patients from the college. So each step along on this journey, I would have, if we would have had an interview like this, I would have told you, like, it can't get any better than this, Matt. Like, the first stop, I'm making all this money, can't get better than this. And the second stop, I'm like, hey, I'm working with my buddies and I'm in this new town. Practice is booming, can't get any better than this. Then I opened up that, with the partners, and I can't get any better than this. I'm thriving. And then go to the college, I'm like, can't get better than this, And I'm working in my own practice, can't get better than this. It's just been a series of like great stops along the way. And I tell you the same thing about what I'm doing now, but it's just it's been a great ride. But it's all felt like a lot of strategic moves around the board, and some are better than others, but they've all translated to this incredible like work satisfaction at every stop along the way.
Good for you. It sounds like an endorsement of physical therapy as a profession, but then also being strategic about moves
Yeah.
and following. That's okay. I want to come back to that. That's really interesting. What's um what's one of the best comeback stories you've witnessed? Because there's a lot of somebody was really kind of damaged or was in a really tough accident, and you maybe the Rudy of your incidents, where I was like, oh my gosh, this person has had a long road back. Obviously, no confidentiality, just the
Yeah.
example of them of what they had to go through, and the best comeback that you witnessed.
Yeah, that's a good question. So, the interesting thing in working with athletes is that there's a very can be very objective about the comeback, right? Like, did they get back to playing again? Did they get back to starting again? Did they get back to their statistics pre-injury? It's very easy to be objective about how far the person came from where they were. So there's a lot of stories about this blowing out a knee and bringing them all the way back. But the interesting thing about on the sports medicine side is that there's oftentimes an orthopedic surgeon involved. Like, someone is repairing them and then sending them to me to finish the job. So for those cases, I don't take credit. You could take credit for the rehab, maybe pushing them, getting them back to their full potential, but most of the hard work is done like in the operating room. So the stories of the big comebacks for me are the cases where you're just debilitating spinal pain, usually neck or back, where you get to the point where they're not really a surgical candidate, or they're trying to hold off on surgery. And then they're just kind of at your mercy. Like, I can't sleep, I can't walk, I can't drive, I can't take care of my kid, can't take care of my property. My life is falling apart because of this pain, and no one can really figure out what they're going to do about it. They can't find it on the MRI, whatever it is. And like I started talking about this earlier, like, physical therapy and Seinfeld, like that kind of hypervigilance. Sometimes you gotta really, like, as a therapist, you have the advantage of spending a lot of time with somebody, right? Like, you're going to spend an hour uninterrupted with them, maybe a couple times a week for a few weeks. Like, you're going to really get to know them. And sometimes through that process, you're able to really pick up on really small things that make a big difference, right? So, it might be something subtle in the way that they're moving, or something subtle you pick up in their medical history to be able to kind of piece things together if you really pay attention. Because
Mhm.
sometimes it's not just all, in history and in a physical exam. So there's been a few cases where you take someone who's just really debilitated from spinal pain, and you're able to kind of piece things together a little bit. Sometimes it's with your hands, sometimes it's moving them around, sometimes it's telling them what to do. But then getting them from the point where they're like feel like their life is in shambles to a full functional return, like those are the best stories. Those are the ones that kind of like make you feel like, all right, we're doing some good in the world. And it's not the medicine, it's not the surgery, it was just the rehab piece.
Amazing. So I'm thinking back to some of my own experiences. I've been to physical therapist a few times and also watching some personal trainers, how they operate. So I guess my question is, how do you balance things? Because I've seen lack of bedside manner where somebody's just very
Mm-hmm.
just process oriented, kind of mechanical, not really looking to bond with the patient at all, right? And it's like really there's no relationship there. It's just more transactional. So kind of
Mm-hmm.
no bedside manner. I've also
Mm-hmm.
seen, again, some firsthand, but also seen like physical therapists, personal trainers, where it seems like they're really just socializing with their client throughout
Mm-hmm.
the session. And it gets like really, oh, this is a great conversation, but it doesn't seem there's much intensity to the actual rehab or to the training. So I've just got like those different sides of the spectrum, but based on your success, how have you been able to blend that when you're working with somebody? Because sometimes bedside manner could be lacking out there, right? In
Mm-hmm.
doctors or whatever else. But also, do you want somebody that's too nice and is becoming your friend, but not getting the
Mm-hmm.
result? How did you balance that?
So there's there's a lot of people out there that you can almost talk into getting better, right? Like if you show some understanding, you meet their affective needs, you gently tell them they got to make some lifestyle changes, you support them in those changes. You can get a lot of people better without touching them and without medication, without surgery, without exercise, just really working through some things, right? So you combine your knowledge of how the human body works with your knowledge of how that person is working, and you can steer them right in the right direction.
Mhm.
So I think that there's not enough of an appreciation for that. They do these studies on like what makes a difference between an expert and a novice clinician across multiple disciplines,
Mhm.
and it tends to be the difference is that you're relying less on your hands, right? You're relying less on diagnostic tests and your hands telling you what to do or fixing the patient, and a little more on listening, talking, right, and meeting their needs. So I think that all that is free, right? Like it's easy to integrate that, right? It's not hard to be a nice person. It's not hard to be supportive, but not everybody has it in them. So I realized when I was younger that even though I might not know all the ways to fix somebody, I could probably relate to them very well. I could probably make them like me and want to keep coming. I could support them. I can make them feel like they're doing something worthwhile. I can encourage them. I can motivate them. So even if I don't know all the right things to do, I might be able to get by some of my personality or communication skills. So for me, I leaned on it early, maybe more so, like what you're alluding to. Like there's some people with you talk to people go, oh, my doctor's the best. Like I don't know if he's the best. He might be the nicest, right? He might be the one who has the longest appointment time. He
Mhm.
might be the one who picks up your phone call, but that doesn't mean he knows everything that he's doing.
Mhm.
So I always thought it was a combination of the two, like almost fake it before you make it by really using your people skills and trying to talk your way through things and be supportive while you're learning your craft of like how exactly can I get this person to the finish line the fastest. So I think for me, I've had the benefit of maybe relying too much on the interpersonal piece and the support in the bedside manner while I let my clinical skills catch up. And then as long as you don't make yourself too busy or turn into a jerk along the way, you usually get the best of both worlds. Because no matter what people say, everybody's kind of practicing when they start. Like you don't know what to do. You don't know what people are going to respond to, how they're going to react to you. So you're really trying to buy some time until you can really figure out what's wrong with someone and how to fix them. So I think it's a combination of the two.
Okay, I guess that's why they call it a practice, right? A medical practice or physical thing. I think the best ones are always learning and getting better. It's never this kind
Mm-hmm.
of one finished product and that's the end of it. But okay, so balancing the bedside manner. it also sounds like you would be kind of inspiring them to do work on their own because there's only so many
Mhm.
hours there with you. So a big part of it is
Yeah.
them to do what they need to do their homework. Yeah. So that's where there's like accountability almost or like inspiration that you give them through
You-
that talk therapy
It's
almost, getting them
yeah,
in the
it's
mindset way.
engagement. Like you're trying to like you're going to be with somebody for 45 minutes, an hour, hour and a half, a few times a week.
Mhm.
But really, the work gets done in a lot of cases outside of therapy by changing something. So, like if sitting is the way that you sit at your desk is causing you back pain, and you come to therapy and we do some interesting things to make you feel better while you're there, but then you just go and sit at your desk for the other 7 hours a day, that you're not in therapy. Really, what are we doing, right? We're not going to really make any significant progress. So it has to be telling you what to do, which way to sit, how not to sit, what to do when you're getting up from your chair during the day to take a break and unload your spine, etc. So I have to tell you how to maybe take care of this all of your waking time on the planet, to try and get this better faster. And small piece of that is going to be the time that you're with me. So the only way that I could get you to do what I need you to do outside the office is by making you feel like you're engaged in this process, right? Like, so if you don't believe that I know what I'm talking about, you're not going to do what I tell you to do. If I can't convince you that it's worth your time to do, you're not going to do what I tell you to do, right? No one's really, I shouldn't say people are. No one's really too busy, right? Or to say I want I want to invest an hour in this to go to see you, but I'm not going to take a few minutes during the day to do what I have to do to try and get myself better. So it's a matter of usually doing some things with them hands on, when they're with you, and then telling them the types of things they need to know to get better. Sometimes it's just real simple. Like, listen, when you go to sleep at night, you got to stop sleeping this way and sleep that way. You'll get better a lot faster. If you believe me, you'll go through the things I tell you to do to make sure you sleep as long as possible in that position. If you don't, you'll be like, I'll just deal with it tomorrow.
Okay. So who is somebody that you learned a ton from in the physical therapy industry and profession?
So I would say that the guy who owned the practice when I joined the successful practice and helped kind of grow it. Um, he was he had no children. Him and his wife were both therapists, and they put all of their effort, all of their waking hours into building this practice. And while I don't know anything about how he treated, there was no legend of how he was fixing all these people and he was this great therapist, but he understood how the industry worked and how to position everybody else around him to be able to get all these people better, to be able to grow this practice to dozens of offices. So for me, it was learning about, not necessarily the hands-on pieces, but, how do I get dozens of people better instead of just the one that I'm working with, right? How do I position this practice to serve this community, right? Or how do I position it to serve multiple communities? How can I like I went into teaching. How can I teach these 30 kids in this room to go out there and do well and fix all these people? And
Mhm.
now in what I do now, like on the insurance side, how do I position a network of therapists for success, right? Like, so for me, it was a lesson in saying it's probably bigger than just fixing the one person, but how do you kind of scale it and make an impact on the industry? I never really seen it that way. It was like, well, if there's 12 therapists, each of them is responsible for getting their 12 individual caseloads better. But he kind of taught me that no, you could have a leader over that really positions them all for success.
Well, so how did he go? How did he do that? How did he execute that? That sounds easier said than done. So,
Yeah, yeah. So you got to give them the support they need, right? Like, you got to make sure they have the training, the ongoing training that they need. You got to make sure that they're not too busy, right? That they have enough time to see their patients for as long as they need to see them. You got to make sure that they have schedules that work for them and their family. You got to make sure that they have the autonomy to see people maybe a little longer or a little shorter than they need to. Make sure they're not overstressed about their billing and their units. But then also making sure that you create an atmosphere for them, that they have the equipment they need, they have the schedule they need, they have the assistant that they need, they have the front desk support that they need, et cetera. Like, creating this environment where someone can just do their craft, I think is really, really important, because some are going to be better than others, but everybody that's going to be seeing someone has a license, which means that they've gone through enough training and taken a test that says they were smart enough and safe enough to be able to do this for the community. So you got to believe everybody's got it in them to do really good work in that atmosphere. but some do better work than others. And sometimes it's because they push themselves further clinically, and sometimes it's just because they're in a great environment.
Yeah.
If you come into the office, think about like, times you've been in therapy. If you walk in there, the front desk is nasty, you have a tough time parking, you feel like someone gave you a hard time about explaining your benefits, and then you went into the room, it wasn't clean, and then someone made you feel rushed in and rushed out, and then you got a bill that you didn't expect in the mail. It really didn't matter how much you liked that therapist, how great it was. You're not going to want to go back, right? You're not going to want to engage with that process. So if you could fix all those things around and really position the patient for success, it makes that therapist job so much easier and more productive.
Yeah, I feel like unfortunately that's not uncommon about like a rushed appointment, and whether it's a doctor or trainer or therapist, that rush of it all, and then also the surprise bill, and I think those are kind of unfortunately not uncommon, and to feel like you're being rushed, or to get like a surprise medical bill or something unfortunate to happen. Tell me I'm wrong. Is that very uncommon? I feel like it does happen.
No, it's the corporatization of medicine, like the corporatization of a lot of industries. Therapy, the margins in physical therapy are really good, and it makes it a very attractive investment. And there's a lot of folks that have targeted that industry as saying, "Hey, this is growing. America is getting older and sicker, and less active. So they're going to be breaking down, and they're going to be less healthy. So let's invest in the people who are going to be able to service them, and get paid for how they're servicing them." And once you do that and you make it a commodity, and you're investing in it, now you're looking for how you can make it more profitable. So whether the parking, if I fix the parking or I fix the amount of cleanliness of the place and the friendliness of the place, it's not really going to increase the bottom line, is the way that they might look at it. So that means that you deprioritize some of the things that are not revenue generating, and you push people to be more productive, and you get that experience kind of denigrates across all of medicine, with the more it's kind of corporatized. There's not as many solo practitioners, whether they're in medicine or in rehabilitation. And the outcome of that is that someone else is controlling that office environment and those schedules. It's not quite what it used to be, unfortunately.
Yep. Okay. And then another transition, right? So now you kind of transitioned into like a corporate setting, not so much like
Mm-hmm.
teaching anymore, not so much, or you might still be teaching, but there was a teaching aspect before that. There was kind of the practicing and a little bit more of a boutique environment. But now we're talking
Mm-hmm.
the corporate side. So, what's your perspective on the corporate? So, what do you do with this? It's a different type of work, right? So,
Yeah.
what's your perspective now? And if I'm misnaming it, this kind of the corporate perspective.
Yeah. So I, while I was teaching and while I was treating, I started doing consulting work in the workers' comp area. So making sure that people were getting the care they needed, and helping decide how much more care they should get, like what was reasonable. So checks and balances, and making sure that payers are paying for what they need to pay, and making sure that providers aren't pushing the envelope and doing more care than is needed in the workers' comp environment. So I started doing that on like a case by case basis, which is not uncommon, like utilization review. They pay physicians and therapists to look at cases and make recommendations. So I had been doing that for years, but when I decided I was done with teaching, I made the leap into doing that full time. So I took a position with this company that I'm with now, where we would, I was overseeing a team of therapists who were doing that type of work, but then also working with our customers who are leaning on us for those types of services. Like, so a large employer might pay millions of dollars in therapy expenses for the year, and they want to know where that money is going. Like, was it well spent? Did their people get better? Did they get better fast enough? Were they placed with the right provider? Did those providers do everything they should do? So what I do now is on the corporate level, interfacing with large employers and large insurance companies and third-party administrators, and making sure that those therapy dollars are spent with the highest value possible. So I am in a corporate setting now. It's very different than where I ever thought I'd land, but it allows me to take that, the experience that I had hands-on, then the experience I had kind of managing therapy practice, but then being able to take that education piece of, being able to explain to somebody, because the people who are making these decisions on the corporate level, my counterparts, they don't have clinical background, right? So they just want to know, like, hey, I spent $10 million in therapy. What did I get? Well, I could show you a bunch of spreadsheets, or I can explain to you, like, this is what the outcomes were. This is how they compare to what we would expect. This is what they cost. This is what they're going to cost next year, because this is where we see it heading. We're talking about whether, their cases are going to get more severe, more expensive in the years to come, or they're going to go the other way. Is the world getting safer? Is healthcare getting more expensive? Like, which way is the wind blowing? And help them make decisions on, how they need to invest in their workers' health.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Which profession is most inclined for injuries? Like, so these employers, the employers you work with, some of them have like many workers' comp claims where they're
Mm-hmm.
people again. So what profession is most often injured?
Well, the one that always comes up from a trivia standpoint is loggers. Loggers. People do work like, really heavy work that tends to be a little more seasonal, with heavier lifting in places where you can't always get automation, right? Like, you can't always get the machinery you need to the places you need to get it. And it takes more brute force than it should. And it's outdoors. Like, that's kind of this perfect storm of dangerous musculoskeletal stuff. So it's always manual labor, but coming in short after that are people who have unusual job demands, like police officers, firefighters, right? Anybody that's working in like combat situations, like those are jobs that the injuries are a little less predictable, but they're very dangerous. It's not the majority of injuries that we see. Those are usually just production injuries. Folks that are doing repetitive work in warehouse environment or maybe in production manufacturing environments.
Okay. I'm gonna bounce around a bit to your first job, the one where they were running scams, basically. Right?
Mm-hmm.
It sounds like. So for any I guess I'm curious about, for any criminal minds that might be listening to this podcast. What was going on? What was going on at this place that they were
Okay, I think I'm gonna tell this in a way that it will maybe relate to you and your audience. So, have you ever heard of a TENS unit? Does that terminology sound familiar to you at all?
Say it again.
So
What's it called?
you might see like maybe Shaq or someone on TV advertising for like an electric stimulation unit that you could put on your body. It gives you some tingling, and then
Sure.
you feel that instead of the pain.
Yes.
And that started like many medical inventions with all good intentions, right? Like, so we could put a small electrode on the body and send a light electrical impulse, and you'll feel that instead of feeling pain, right? So, like, when you whack your let's say you whack your hand, your instinct might be to rub your hand or to shake it, because those stimulations of the friction and the vibration get to your brain faster than pain does. So you don't feel pain when you do this, and you don't feel pain when you do this, right? But when you stop, you feel the pain.
Mm-hmm.
So if I could put this unit on your elbow, you'll feel tingling instead of feeling pain. It's not going to fix you at all, but you won't feel pain while it's on. So we don't really do it in the clinic, but you might do it at home. It runs on a AA battery. You can get it at Walmart, probably, right? You don't need a prescription for it, and maybe you can get you can get your insurance company to pay it for you if you got chronic pain. Okay, so think it would be pointless for me to bring you into my office and put that on you, because it's not really going to cure you. It's just going to make you feel better for the time you're in the office. So what's the point, right? Okay. Now, therapists can bill for that code for that type of electric stimulation. There is another type of TENS unit that you might be able to use that's a little more potent, a little more powerful. And I would never think to use it in a therapy clinic, because it's doing the same thing just more intensely. It doesn't make sense. Like, I can't stop your pain more. Like, I could just stop it or not stop it, right? So they have this unit that they use for dental procedures, because if someone doesn't want to get or maybe a small surgical procedure, if someone can't get anesthesia or they can't get a needle to inject, they might put this TENS unit on to numb the area. So that sounds reasonable. But these people figured out that, well, since it's an electric current, that I could bill it under my name. And it would be the only code that a therapist could bill that would be a surgical code, which means it's reimbursed like almost like anesthesia. So that means that they're sending me to an office and asking me to just do this on all these patients, right? Just give them this thing that doesn't really do much, but can get reimbursed like surgery. So they put me in this room and just had me parade in these patients and do this one treatment to them. No clinical value, right? Incredibly financially rewarding to the ownership of the practice. But it was definitely like they found this little cheat code that they figured out in kind of the billing review process that it would get through with my license and a surgical code. But I had no idea that's what was going on. So they leveraged the idea that I wasn't paying attention and that I was a new grad and they could just pay me $20,000 more than I thought I earned, that I deserved. And I would just do whatever they said. And they were right. I just did it until I figured out why exactly I was doing it. Like, how can we possibly be getting paid for this? The insurance company might pay like $15 for this. Why are they parading in like one person an hour for this stupid treatment that doesn't even work? It's because they were making so much money, just billing auto insurance and like no fault insurance for this stupid code.
Okay, I want to peel that back a little bit more and understand the economics of it. So we have a private practice, a physical therapy practice, right? We have a patient, and then we have
Mhm.
this other party, which is the insurance company. Or give me all the economics because this is
Sure.
all fuzzy.
So let's say you run a doctor's office or maybe you run a chiropractor's office, right? And you got all these patients who are injured and under your care.
Mhm.
You can give them care and bill the insurance company, whoever's paying the bills, for your services. But there's also sometimes a agreed to that says a level of agreed to it where it says, well, since I got all these patients under my care, maybe I could find a way to get more care to them,
Mhm.
right? Like I could refer them to a specialist and they could make some money, or I could refer them to some type of equipment and they can make some money. But that doesn't really make me money as a provider. So maybe what I could do is I could say, for whatever you bill them, just give me a cut of it. You can have access to my patients if you give me a cut of what you're making off of them. So, so you own a chiropractor office, you own a physician's office. Some agency comes in and says, we're going to send a therapist in so they can do this treatment, and we're going to make hundreds of dollars an hour, and we'll give you some of that hundreds of dollars an hour as a cut. And so Brian's going to get paid. Brian's employer is going to get paid. The person who set the visit up, like that doctor, that chiropractor, whatever, they're going to get paid. The patient is going to get some level of treatment that they're consenting to, but the insurance company gets fleeced for something that had no medical value.
Understood. Okay. But then I guess at the insurance company, how are they just getting the wool pulled over their eyes? Where's all this money coming from for them to be able to continuously reimburse? 'Cause I think
It's
most
coming.
checks
It's
and
come.
balances and inefficient. God, you tell me.
Well, it's coming from the premiums that you and I pay on our insurance every month, right? But in every state, there's different rules around who needs to pay for what, and some states are a little more liberal with what I shouldn't say they're more liberal with it, but they're required to pay for more. So, um, in some states, if you just say, let's say you get hurt at work and someone says, "Oh, you need this particular surgery," you get that particular surgery, and then whoever's paying the bill is on the hook for that bill. In other states, it goes through a utilization review process to say, was that really necessary? And every state's got different timing for how they want to review it, what can be denied, what can't. So if you're a practitioner and you're feeling a little bit greedy, you could figure out what's the most you could bill for without someone looking at it. Or what can you bill for at a really high rate that won't come under review? And there tends to be a few holes in the system that have since been clogged. I'm sure you couldn't get away with what they were doing now, where, we could really run up the bill in this area and no one's going to be able to stop us.
So back in the day, circa 2000, this
Mhm.
private practice is char submitting for reimbursement from the insurance company. How much was that? Was it TEM? What's it called, TEMS or STEMS? That
So it was TENS to ENS,
how much were they
but
charging?
a very particular type of it that allowed it to be billed as a surgical code, and it
Yes.
would get billed by by one of these parties, um, either the person who is owning the practice or the person who's supplying the therapist to provide the service. But it's no different than someone just saying, you know what you benefit from? Massage therapy or acupuncture or a brace, and you say, okay, we'll just give you all that. We'll give you all that, and we're just going to bill your insurance company for it, and they'll pay us for it, whether you need it or not.
Okay. But this specific high intensity TEMS, right? TEMS is
Mm-hmm.
called. So
Mm-hmm.
how much
TENS. Yeah.
Tennis. How much were they charging for that? Back in
I'm probably hundreds of dollars per session
hundreds of dollars per session. Okay.
for maybe 20 minutes of what was probably a sham.
Wow.
Yeah.
Okay. I'm just asking about this because the criminal mind aspect. This is not just,
Yeah.
but this stuff goes out in society still, right? There are headlines in Minnesota or New York recently.
Yeah.
This stuff happens where you get a hold of a charge code, basically, right? You get a hold of a
Hmm.
reimbursement code, and you just start hitting that thing, and the
Hmm.
insurance, Medicare, Medicaid, or private insurance, they'll pay out. So I guess
Hmm.
you look for this weakness in the system and then exploit it. Unfortunately, that seems to have. So we're trying to understand it also for people who are trying to
Yeah.
prevent fraud, where the game happened, where this scams where these
Yeah.
scams
So
happen.
there's two holes in the system from where I can see. One is that if I had your, let's say, say for example, I had your insurance card, your information, right? And I just bill your insurance company, right? ABC Insurance. I just bill ABC for a physical therapy evaluation today. And they're going to write me a check. Now, the understanding is that you would have had a copay that you would have paid me. I'll just forget about that. And then you would have some co-insurance, right? We'll just forget about that. And I'll just take whatever the insurance company gives me. Now, you weren't in my town today. I could just make up some notes if anybody asks, right? Like, how does anybody know that I didn't treat you today?
Mhm.
They would have to look and see, did you sign in today? Did you, do I have some evidence that you were here? What did it look like? But I could do that and you wouldn't know um, unless somebody audited it.
Mhm.
So if it's Medicare and I could get your information enough to submit the claim, I could just do that all day long and just never have you engaged in. I just fleece the government for all that money. So that's one piece of the fraud that happens. The other piece is if I just find a way to maybe run up I am actually treating you, but I'm going to submit for some things that really didn't happen, or I'm going to give you some things that don't have any medicinal benefit because I found a hole that I know I can get it through. So, it's not putting someone in a nursing home that doesn't belong there. It's sending them a wheelchair. It's saying you're going to bill them for a wheelchair that they don't need, and then they never get it, and they don't even know that they were supposed to have it.
Okay.
So I have some deal worked out with the wheelchair vendor that I'm going to write some order, and he's just going to not deliver it, and we're both going to submit the bill.
Yeah, I want to move. I want to talk about other things, but this is kind of fascinating to me because there are ways to prevent this, but it is rampant because lack of audits and lack of investigations. And people are always looking at holes in the system, exploit holes in the system, right?
It's going to get easier with artificial intelligence to be able to sift through these things. So historically, to detect fraud and abuse, you have to have I'll give you a good example.
Mhm.
Let's say you get a knee surgery and you bill, the doctor bills for 2 hours worth of operating room time and anesthesia, right? The 2 hours is reasonable. So that bill is just going to get paid, right? But I might look at that operative note and see that you're only on anesthesia for 1 hour, right?
Mhm.
But no one would think to look at that because the 2 hours was reasonable. The only way you could detect that the billing wasn't congruent with what was in the note for your operative time is if a human looked at it.
Mhm.
But with artificial intelligence, you could just take all those notes, have them all scanned, match them all up with the billing, and see if it all lines up. Right. So I could say, all right, you're going to bill, some elderly woman for a wheelchair she's not going to get. She would have had to have signed for it at some point. We would have had to have been able to triangulate some of the data to know that she got this thing or didn't. Right? Is there a packing slip? Is there a delivery note? Is there a FedEx record of it getting there or something? Well, if you want to get paid for it, you got to send it all in, and then the computer will triangulate all of it. So historically, we would only go after from a fraud and abuse standpoint, like the most egregious things. Like if they billed you for 12 hours in the operating room, someone would pick it up and go, no, 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 that's not right. But if they just bill you for 1 extra hour, it would go under the radar. So the idea that you could use artificial intelligence to scan all these notes, triangulate all the data points, allows you to do with more than humans to detect it. So it should get better.
Okay, good to know. That's somewhat comforting because there's been a lot of headlines about this and fraud and also kind of kickbacks to patients or people who have
Mhm.
Medicaid insurance or Medicare insurance. So this happens, yeah. I'm not these headlines.
Sure.
This is not
Yeah.
based on this stuff does happen, yeah.
Well, if I wanted to get you that fake wheelchair, I could just give you $20 to just sign this paper and say that you got it, even though you didn't really get it. So I make a couple hundred. The other vendor makes a little bit, and then and the patient gets whatever kind of kickback you give them, all for them just claiming that they had it.
Yeah.
Right.
So hopefully auditors and investigators and AI, everybody steps up their game and this stops happening because somebody's losing. The people who lose, it sounds like the ones who are paying premiums
Mm-hmm.
and are paying into it and not really using their insurance or using
Mm-hmm.
it responsibly. The other ones are the ones that are kind of taking advantage from what I can understand. Yeah.
Yeah, if you were thinking about getting into the fraud and abuse business, I would maybe think twice. I think it's gonna get tougher and tougher to do these things.
Okay. Got it. Fraud prevention is where it's at. Okay, got
Yes, maybe get in the fraud prevention business, not in the fraud administration
it.
business. I
Makes
would
sense.
advise going on the on the right side of the law for that.
Makes sense. All right, so I do have a few more questions, but I want to do a time check here. I know in Seinfeld it needs to end of its own volition, or some people use the word momentum. But so we can let the. How are you on time? I'd love to keep going, but I want to be
I'm
respectful.
good. I'm
You good?
good.
Okay.
I'm
All
good.
right. We'll let it end of its own volition at some point. Hopefully that happens. So chiropractors, what's the deal with chiropractors? Because I feel like sometimes it might be in do I see a physical therapist? Do I see a chiropractor? What's the compare and contrast there?
A lot of overlap, right? A lot of the same patient population, just with very different schools of thought.
Mhm.
So the approach would be different. The goal is the same, and because the approach is different, the way that care is managed and the scheduling of visits, or the cadence of the visits, and the energy around like kind of the episode of care is a little different. So like therapy traditionally is what we'd say in the medical model. Like you're going to be wrapped up with nurses and physicians and going to what we'd consider like kind of traditional medicine, right? So like a doctor might send a patient to a therapist. The therapist, if they can't help them, they might send them back. It's very kind of a traditional workflow that most of us are comfortable with. Chiropractors work outside of that medical model. So it's a little more common for people to access them directly. So you got pain, you can go right into the chiropractor's office, right? Their approach to managing it would be a little different. They might have the same diagnostic philosophies of saying, all right, we're going to figure out where this is. We're going to address it now. We're going to try and make some lifestyle changes. We're going to monitor them. We're going to try and focus on function, et cetera. But their school of thought is a little more centralized to the spine. So therapists are always looking for kind of the root of the symptoms. Like, where is it coming from, this shoulder pain? Is it like kind of your neck? Is it your posture? Is it something that's happening in the nerves down your arm? Chiropractic, it tends to be the school of thought is that it tends to be the root more often than not is the spine itself. So that means that, all right, well, what part of the spine is not in alignment or is not working the right way or moving enough? And that must be the root of these symptoms. Now, so when you believe that it's, the spine itself as being the root of a lot of this, your efforts to fix it are centralized towards the spine. There's only so much you can do, right? You can twist it, you can move it, you can strengthen it, you can stretch it, you can massage it, and then also you can manipulate it. Right? So you can move it in such a way that that causes some separation and movement between the bones. So to manipulate it or to adjust it is to move the bones beyond what they would normal movement with. So like if the spine bends front to back, right? What if you were able to shift it this way, right? So instead of bending, you're able to shift it front to back. Probably not explaining that well, but the idea that you'd move it in a plane that doesn't naturally move. And sometimes you hear or feel like that pop or that crack. So a lot of chiropractic care, you hear and see a lot about that, particularly in like kind of the more traditional sense of chiropractics. On the therapy side, it's a little more geared towards, how do you restore mobility, right? So if your mobility is limited by pain or nerve irritation or tissue damage, how can you get the body moving in a way that's more natural and restored to how it normally moves? That can be manipulating it, but oftentimes it's a little more of kind of the stretching, the movement of nerves, the strengthening of muscles, etc. So a therapist will tell you that you want to rebuild what's been damaged, and that's a matter of exercise and it's a matter of weeks. Chiropractor might say we need to restore your normal mechanics of the spine, and that might be something you have to routinely experience over a period of time. Sometimes for long haul, sometimes for short haul, but just a different way of managing the same symptoms. So I would say that the providers are educated a little bit differently, but they see the same type of patients, they have the same goals, but their philosophies on how to get there are a little bit
Kind of almost like I'm thinking a chicken and egg type scenario. Like if somebody's having, I guess let's do a pop quiz. You ready for a pop quiz? Like this is circa 1997, Archbishop Malloy. This is going to be, I'm going to put you on the spot. So let's, this is from firsthand experience. I want to see how much you know. You ready? You scared?
different.
You a little intimidated right now?
I don't know where we're going, but I'm ready.
All right. So somebody's experiencing, again, I have some firsthand
Mm-hmm.
with this, some back spasms, and
Mm-hmm.
in that QL area. Is that the right? It's like,
Mm-hmm.
all right.
Sure.
But then there's also this so-called dysfunction in the sacroiliac joint. Is that right?
You're
Okay.
doing great. You're
Okay.
doing great.
So those one is more joint, one is more muscle. Yeah, but
Mm-hmm.
they're all working together or not in some cases, in
Mm-hmm.
some ways. And it's chicken or egg. Should I see a chiropractor? Should I see a physical therapist? Should I see
Mm-hmm.
both? So what would be your take on that in keeping with the different schools of thought or different education of the providers when you see that which comes first, which came first, which didn't
Mm-hmm.
come first? Is it unknown? What are your thoughts? Pop quiz.
Yeah, well, I bring a clear set of biases to the equation. So my answer is always going to be go to therapy. That's the answer. But there's patients that I can't, that I have not been able to fix and referred to a chiropractor and vice versa. Right. So I believe that both professions could get to the solution for both of them. But because a chiropractor would tell you, yeah, that's the spine. That's what they do. They'll take care of it. I would tell you that I've treated thousands of patients with the same symptoms, right? So I would say that the solution there is going to be the quadratus lumborum or the QL, it's soft tissue, right? So there's a piece of that that's how do you rehabilitate a muscle? Well, you got to make sure it's got the right elasticity and stretched out enough. Then you got to make sure it's got the right stability and it's strong enough to do what it needs to do. The SI joint is mechanical, right? It's where the base of your spine meets up with your pelvis and wraps around. So that needs to move smoothly with your pelvis as you move, and oftentimes it can get kind of stuck or shifted a little bit out of place. So while the thought would be for that one, well, we just pop it right back into place, you'd feel like $1,000,000. So that's something that I would do. It's also something that the chiropractor would do. We would do it a little differently, but we'd probably do the same thing. And then my strategy might be to really focus on how we're going to strengthen up all the muscles that are supposed to keep it that way. Whereas the chiropractor strategy might be like, something is off that's causing this to be a problem. So let's make sure everything is in alignment, and then let's see how you do over a couple of days, and then come back and we'll get you set up again. And eventually you'll kind of be able to hold this. So two different schools of thought. My thing is always find the root problem, fix that, and then hopefully it all unfolds. The downfall of that is it takes a little time, right? So if I was dealing with an 18-year-old young man, they might be like, no, I need it now so that I can go back and play baseball next week, right? Whereas the chiropractic approach might be like a quick, we're going to fix it up and then out you go. Whereas my approach might be like, listen, I want this to be fully functioning in 3 weeks from now. So we're going to go a little slow and steady here and get this worked out. So it depends on who they are and what they need, but generally I'd say it's the physical therapy is the way to
Okay. And with that sacroiliac, is that the right pronunciation? With
go.
that,
Got it.
so if it locks up, then
Mm-hmm.
a physical therapist or somebody would also unlock it, or is that,
Mm-hmm.
yeah? Okay. So that
Yeah.
could, and would you sometimes encourage somebody to see both at the same time, like go on appointments with both simultaneously over the course of weeks or months?
It's generally not good to see two people, regardless of what body part or what system we're talking about. I generally say it's not a good idea to have two people trying to solve the same problem at different times,
Mm,
or in the same period of time, I should say.
mm,
But so I would say you pick one or the other. But the difference between like how a PT might unlock it and a chiropractor might unlock it is a difference between the amount of velocity or force that they're going to apply to fix it. Like how much thrust is there going to be to pull it back into place? So there's things I could do where I kind of put you in a certain position, then just go, subtle push on it in the right direction, forceful and quick, right? But you might not feel that dramatic, like, whoa, what just happened, right? And there's also ways to do it where you can get your muscles. You know what an isometric contraction is? Does that sound familiar to you? Like if you push against something that doesn't move, right? That's an isometric contraction. So if you put your hands under your desk and you try to push up on your desk, assuming your desk is heavy, your biceps would be firing, right? And they'd be working really hard, but your elbow wouldn't be bending, right? You can use that idea to kind of pull joints into different positions. So it's a matter of like positioning someone just the right way, getting their muscle to fire the right way, and you can pull joints back into place.
Interesting. So with chiropractors, like when that popping sound occurs or cracking, what's actually happening there? I heard it's something to do with like air, but and it could happen in subsequent days too. All of a sudden you hear a pop or a crack or in the back, even when you're not in the appointment. What is that phenomenon of the noises coming out of
So
the body?
all all joints have are encapsulated, right? So there's a certain amount of fluid that sits inside of a joint. It's easy to imagine like your knee, right, having like this capsule around it, and there's fluid in there. And when someone were to, have an injury on the inside part of their knee, right, like their meniscus or something, this fluid would start accumulating, like swelling, right? You get all this pressure in a capsule, right? Just more pressure. So every joint in your body has a capsule around it, right? That maintains a certain amount of pressure. And then there's air plays a role in that too, right? So if you think about like quickly moving a joint through that movement, right? You're taking and shifting things that's changing the pressure in that joint, and you get that what they call like a cavitation. It's like an air bubble pop that happens when you feel that. Some people it's different than like when you crack your knuckles or you do something like that. There's a little bit of that same idea of like you're really just shifting them around in an area where the pressure is high because your joints are bent, right? So it's just a matter of like air pressure and movement that creates that like slight pop.
Okay. So it sounds like your journey, it's been in physical therapy and in your career, it's been a lot of moments where oh man, things are pretty good. Like things are great.
Mm-hmm.
Or I have it pretty good. It's been a lot of highlights of like, it doesn't get any better than this. And then it gets even better. So if you were advising somebody in high school years or college years or even somebody looking to change careers in terms of the future of the profession, would you
Mm-hmm.
encourage them to get into the field? Or and if so, why?
So I, my hesitation is that it doesn't seem, now I'm not on the front lines treating patients now, but it doesn't seem like it's as much fun as it used to be. So my wife is a therapist. She's in an office a couple of days a week, and she just talks about the grind of the paperwork, the productivity. The expectations of the patients are a little different than they used to be. So it doesn't sound like as much fun as it used to be. Now, the actual work is incredibly rewarding. It's great working with patients, great being in there in the trenches and doing your craft. But the area around it seems to be a little less kind of user-friendly than it used to be. So I'm not as quick to tell people like, hey, this is the way to go, because I don't know what the future holds. The craft will stay the same, but will you be able to get paid as much? And will it be as much fun? I don't know. But I'll give you two examples. When I first started, there was no internet, which meant that people would just come in and they'd go, hey, why does a joint make this noise when a chiropractor pops it? And I'd explain it, and they'd go, oh, okay. Now they come in and they're like, well, I understand it's the air bubble, hey, what you told me yesterday about that cavitation, that's not what really happens. That sounds a little different than what I heard. And I was reading on the internet that maybe we should do it this way. And how come we're not doing this? Like, people come in armed with a lot more information and knowledge, which can be very good. But it also means they're coming in with preconceived notions that they didn't have before. You used to just have to worry about their neighbor saying, oh, I had this surgery, or I had therapy, or I saw Dr. So-and-so. Now you're worrying about the whole world that's publishing on these forums and putting YouTube videos out that are creating patients are coming in less pure, and less open-minded than they were before because they have a lot of information that may or may not be accurate. And none of it applies specifically to their condition, right? So I'm sitting down trying to solve their problem for them, and they've got thoughts floating around about what else they're hearing and reading and what they're seeing on the internet. So that's one thing. The patient is different. The second thing is that when I started, there were little or no copays. Mm-hmm. So if you hurt yourself and you're going to therapy, you're going to be in there 3 times a week for 4 weeks, and you're not paying anything out of pocket when you walk in, and you're leaving feeling like you just had a great hour with a professional who taught you some things, made you feel better, stretched you out, gave you some attention, and then sent you on your way, and you're feeling a little better every time, you'd be incredibly satisfied with that experience, and you'd be anxious to go back. But when you walk in and someone asks you for a $50 copay before you talk to someone, your expectations for what you're going to get for that $50 is a little different. Forget about the $250 that's costing your insurance company or whatever it might be, but never $250 in private insurance. But forget about what the insurance company pays. It's now like what I paid out of pocket. Like, am I getting what I expected out of that? Which means you're a little more critical of the parking lot, of the water cooler. Is it cold enough in the thing? Did the guy spend enough time with me? Is this place clean enough? Like, the expectations are a lot different when people have a higher out-of-pocket expense. The risk is just shared now in a way that it wasn't before. So the patient is different, and the productivity, because a lot of it is corporatized, that's different, but the craft is still the same. So I'm not as excited about recommending it as I was in years past. For me, it's been great, but I'm not sure what the future holds.
Okay. I'm just laughing a little bit thinking about you at that age of 15 or 13 having so much direction that even adults are like, man, you have a lot of direction. This is really impressive. Like it really was inspiring to a lot of people how focused and how much direction you had as a young'un. And
you got to be careful when you tell a young kid he's got a good idea. They latch onto it. I remember, like, when I first started practicing, there would be this guy came in and he was like, how long is it going to take before I can run again? I'm like, so you give him the right answer, which is, well, we'll see how things go after a week. Like, meanwhile, I have no idea like how fast this thing is going to get better. Right? I have no frame of reference, but this guy's like dying to run and he's leaning on me for an answer. I'm like, I don't know. And then someone told me, like, I was asking another therapist, I'm like, how do you know what to tell them if you don't know what the answer is? Like, oh, you just tell them something, and then, we'll see what happens. Right. So next patient would come in and be like, how long until I can, climb up a ladder again? I'd go 4 weeks. And they would go, okay. The next time they come in, they're like, all right, so you're saying it's going to get better in 4 weeks. So blah, blah, blah. Like, just giving people an answer, like what they want to hear, is incredibly empowering and intoxicating. I saw it as like a young man trying to pick a career, but patients are the same way. If you say, hey, what's going to happen next month? And the person doesn't know for sure, but if they give you an educated answer, you latch on, like, great. Someone told you your car's going to run for another 2 years and then you're going to have to replace it. You're like, great. Okay, let's go. Let's see what happens in 2 years. I'm good. It's just intoxicating to get that affirmation and the information.
Wow. So it's the fake it till you make it, but it's also the manifestation where once there's a story, then that story sometimes gets fulfilled. And
but then the flip side of that, Matt, is what kind of stock can you put in people's answers if they might be telling you what you want to hear, right? So, like, someone says, hey, you're going to get better in 2 weeks. Oh, you're going to need an oil change in 2 months from now, or you're going to replace the roof on your house in a year. Are they just saying that, or do they really know? Like, is it really an informed opinion? Like, now, if I tell you it's going to take 4 weeks before you can run, you can bet that I know, because I've been doing this a long time and I'm an expert in my field. But if you would have got me 20, 30 years ago and I told you it's going to take 4 weeks, you should be thinking, this guy has no idea. He's making an educated guess, right? So I think of it now, like in my own life, when someone tells me what something's going to cost or whatever, I think about, all right, what kind of expertise is this person coming from, right? Is this a plumber who's been doing this for 50 years, right? Or is it someone who's, just looked it up on the internet and is giving me whatever they heard?
Yeah. I love that about the expertise and being an expert, because it's almost unavoidable now, and I don't enjoy bringing it up, but the whole AI thing, right? So sometimes these AI companions are telling people what they want to hear, right? They're so talk to me a little bit about that.
You got to be in that. You got to be in that situation too, right? Like, you're in the business of giving expert advice and opinions and guidance, right, professionally. on issues that are important, right? Like maybe salary structure or something like that, benefits. Like trying to position someone right for a conversation is arming them with really good information and then a strategy, right? But now somebody is not just turning to you and going, Matt, just tell me what to do. By the time they got to you, they've already done probably some AI research, and they have some salary bracket or some negotiation strategy, and they're turning to you, right? Like, so you have to find a way to, I'm imagining, personalize that information, leverage your expertise, but also be able to make it clear that what they might have read might not be exactly applicable to their situation or might not be well informed. Right? It's something that all professionals, I think, are going to have to wrestle with.
Yeah, makes sense. I feel like AI and some of you can go back to Google search engines. A lot of times they pull from very common or very, they'll pull from Wikipedia or they'll pull from the Mayo
Mm-hmm.
Clinic or this is the kind of these go-tos, and then it's
Mm-hmm.
repackaged as like the one correct answer. You
Mm-hmm.
don't always go down to the results in a search engine that are results 200 through 300. Usually you look at the first few that are sponsored
Yeah.
or that are, that are kind of carefully curated, but aren't always expert opinions, and sometimes just that one perspective. Tell me I'm wrong.
Well, I had an interesting Seinfeld related corollary here
Okay.
with AI. I was thinking about how I don't know how much you use it, but from my experience, a lot of ChatGPT and Gemini, you get a lot of positive affirmation, right, in the response you get. So if you said like, "Hey, I sprained my ankle. I started with some ice and some elevation. What should I do next?" The response you're going to get is being like, "That's a great start. This is exactly where you should start. Here is what you should do next," right? So you get that affirmation. You're like, "Oh, all right, like I'm on the right track." So I was thinking about maybe a Seinfeld character, like a Costanza of sorts, maybe just being fueled by that positive affirmation. So perhaps George is looking for a little dating advice, like, "Hey, I did this, or I took this person this way. What should I do?" George, that's the perfect thing to do. You did this the right order, and I'm suggesting maybe this here, and get a little like kind of maybe false sense of security that you're smarter than you really think you are, because it's just going to tell you a little bit about what you want to hear, and then like you said, a targeted like response that's pulled from some random place. So I can imagine a Seinfeld character getting their ego fed by their AI engine, but then also getting bad misinformation that's taking them down the wrong road in their restaurant choice, their relationship choice, maybe what movie to see, right? I could see it. I could see the storyline.
I can see it too. Well, this isn't really an affirmation; it's more of a mantra. I think of Serenity Now. That's on. But I'm also thinking of the episode where Kramer or Newman is basically feeding Kramer things to say at at the bookstore, but then also,
Yes.
and he's just repeating it. So there's this kind of predictive predictive language, but just being or what the AI thing you were mentioning about the affirmations and hey, that's a great start. I'm hearing more and more that there's like these kind of sycophant AI
Mm-hmm.
companions, and they'll basically just so even if it's not a great start, they'll say it's a great start, which could be kind of
Yes.
dangerous. Yeah, and
Exactly.
I've seen some.
Exactly.
I
I
don't know.
think I yeah.
Sorry.
I could see that like I even know that it's coming, and it's still like it still instills something in me when I'm like hey, I'm trying to fix this in my trying to fix like my hot water heater or something, and I'm like, I've tried this, I've tried that, I'm thinking, should I go with this or that? And they would say, "You're on the right track, Brian. It's exactly the right thought process here. And I understand that this could be frustrating. Let's talk about some options." I start to feel good about it. It's even though I know it's a computer and I know that's what it does, it's like it's telling you what you want to hear, which is never, which can't always be the best advice.
Yeah, it's not exactly the scientific method, but what's coming? What's been like the most outside of the realm thing you had a patient say to you at any point in your career that they had done their own deep dive in the internet, whether it's WebMD, whatever else. They did their own research and they came
Mm-hmm.
in and they either self-diagnosed or they had something kind of really outside of the box
Mm-hmm.
startled you or is memorable about how they self-diagnosed or some quack or crackpot theory that they had about what was going on.
That's a good question. I think it was probably somebody Googling the wrong diagnosis, right? So like if someone comes in to me, oftentimes they will have seen their physician already, which means that the physician wrote on the prescription, like, the diagnosis, and then go to therapy, and then, go 3 times a week for a month or something. But that handwriting is never legible, right? It's difficult to decipher. It's easy for me because I know probably, what they're trying to get at there. But to a patient, it's hard to dissect it. Now it's all on EMR, and it's all typed. You're going to get a handout. You're not going to have any problem reading it. Back in the day, when it's handwriting from a physician, it's a problem. So you'd have patients who would try and Google. This is before the medical record was electronic, but after the internet was involved. You have this window where patients are trying to Google whatever they were interpreting on the physician's handwriting, and they would go down this rabbit hole of thinking they had like some deadly disease or something that involved like possible amputation or something. Like, no, this is like tendonitis or bursitis, not some unusual, infection from the West Indies. Like this is, you're Googling the wrong thing, right? So you'd have patients who got themselves all worked up about what they think their doctor thinks they have, what they think they need. They can't figure out why they're in therapy. Like, no, you're reading that's a T and not an I in that word. Like, you just relax, right? But it's always amazing to me the difference between like treating patients before the internet and after. Like, it's just so, I'm no different, right? I go to the doctor. I've already Googled what I think I have, what the medication might be, what type of tests I might need, what to ask the doctor, what they might tell me, what other diagnosis I should consider, what I should help myself before I get there. Do I really need to go? Like, I'm no different, but it's so different as a practitioner when someone comes in with that type of research behind them. And it just never happened before.
Like we said earlier about going to an expert, and I think that's critical. Somebody who has a lot of data, a lot of experience, has seen and heard a ton, has learned from their mistakes, and yeah, I think that's really big. So, what might be that next chapter for you? Talk about, you hit these points of, man, it doesn't get any better than this, and
Mm-hmm.
you're feeling that now. So, what may come next in your journey? You're still a relatively young man, so
It's a
what?
great question. I'm wondering about when I was treating, I was thinking I wanted to I saw it like kind of maybe trending a little bit in the wrong direction, like people getting burnt out a little early, people not having as much fun. And I thought I should get on the other side of this. And to me at that time, it was education. Like, let me get on the other side, like the teaching side of this. Let me get on the ownership side. Let me just get on the other side of the treating and seeing like what it's like over there. So now I'm on the other side, meaning the insurance side.
Mhm.
And, it's very fulfilling for me. Like, I'm doing work that's like perfectly tailored to my skill set and interest, but I don't know if it's as rewarding as it was treating patients, but I don't know that I could go back there. So I'm trying to figure out, how do I get on the other side of the insurance equation? Right. So what does it look like when you're staying ahead of the curve? And to me, I think it's probably this AI piece and the role that it might play in figuring out what people need to get better in a more like evidence informed way. So like, think about, let's say you have some type of rash on your shoulder and you're trying to figure out what you're going to do about that. You go to the physician and he's going to look at it thinking, he or she is going to just think, well, I've seen this before, or I know this pattern, or I learned about this, or I've seen this in pictures and textbooks, and this is what it is. That could be from a very informed place, right? Like years of experience and a lot of training in dermatology, right? But it also could be a guess. But based on the size, the shape, and the onset of that rash, it should be detectable, like exactly, maybe to a high degree of certainty, what exactly it is. That probably could be from taking a picture of it, and instead of using the physician's eyes to figure out what it is, using evidence that's in published journals and textbooks from all over the world, all in one place, all at the same time, could a medical AI engine diagnose that better than the physician? I believe it can. I don't know if the decision making after that and working with the patient can, but the idea of detecting what that is can be. So how do we figure out like how to put that technology in the hands of the provider to make their job easier so that it can leverage all the existing information that could be informing them, but isn't because they're younger or because they don't see that diagnosis in their practice, or because they never see those types of patients, right? So I'm thinking the next step for me is trying to get on the other side of leveraging the technology to figure out what the heck is going on with these people and what we think can work. I know when I was early in my career, like I was saying before, I didn't know how long it was going to take for something to get better. I didn't know what was wrong with these patients. It took, like they said, the 10,000 hours. It took years to figure it all out. And I'm wondering if we can like accelerate that using the technology. And then I think the other side of the insurance equation is figuring out how do we incentivize that? How do we put value on the payment side to make it really worthwhile and create an atmosphere where providers can treat comfortably, leveraging the technology as opposed to kind of sitting back and being afraid of it, like I was, because patients are coming in with more information. How do you flip that?
Love it. It's really interesting. I think we're ending of our own volition here and then of our own momentum. And thinking of physical therapy, it's the key. It's like I said, the key to understanding risk management is what was the key to learning that is to understand risk management. So I feel like I learned, I forget the line, but I learned a lot about physical therapy today. And for people that are looking to reach out to you to maybe start a career in that profession
Mm-hmm.
or want to pick your brain on some current issues in the industry or just network with you, what's the best way for people to get in touch with you to learn more or to build a relationship with you?
Sure, I'm very responsive to people that reach out to me on LinkedIn. I'm willing to connect with anybody who's interested in connecting with me. And then there's an avenue for direct messaging. Any aspiring healthcare professionals are welcome to reach out. Any Seinfeld aficionados who want to connect on the intersection of Seinfeld and healthcare, I'm happy to do that too. So Brian Pierce, you can find me on Netflix. Netflix. Don't find me on Netflix. Find me on LinkedIn. And you can
LinkedIn.
connect with me there, and I'm happy to provide any guidance I can.
Brian Pierce, Peers, right?
That's
Two
correct.
E's.
Yep.
Brian and people who are watching LinkedIn. Thank you so much. I learned a ton. It was a pleasure, and maybe we'll do it again.
Sounds good, Matt. Thanks for the time.
Have a good one.